Hey guys, hopefully I'm not on a delay right now. I am having some connection issues, but thank you for joining me today for how to utilize carbs for metabolism and energy, especially if you're a 40 plus business owner like myself. Having sustained energy throughout the day is really important, and mental acuity. So we're going to go into some tactics, some takeaways for this. I promise to keep this concise and very to the point, but also get into the details of why carbohydrates are important and how we can leverage them. Just as we like to do leveraging in business, this is very important to know how to leverage it for your overall energy and metabolism and how we don't have to avoid them. So again, a little overview for myself. My name is Sarah Bennett. I've been in the fitness industry for 23 years. I'm a fitness consultant global now. I also have a pre-med education in biomedical science. I own a government contracting company as well, so I'm a multi-business owner. This is actually from one of my kitchens, from one of our meal prep days. So the objective today is to teach you how you don't have to cut carbs, but how you can actually leverage them for your benefit. So let's get right into it. So why are carbs important? So they are the main source of energy production for our bodies and for our brain. Our brain can function off of ketones, but it prefers to function on glucose. So glycogen rather. So it is a metabolic booster. So again, we're talking about energy and metabolism. So how it boosts our metabolism is that it keeps it running efficiently and it prevents it from slowing down and having crashes if you know how to time it correctly. And again, it can help maintain insulin sensitivity if you structure it correctly. It can cause negative things for insulin if you have too much of it and the wrong kinds and the wrong timing of it. So we'll get into that as well. Again, your brain function is very, very preferred on taking glucose and glycogen as the main energy source, though you can, yes, function off of ketones. So when you go to a lack of carbohydrates in your diet, this is when you can have some cognition delays and fog, mental fog. If you go into ketosis, for example, you will have a few days of having that mental fog, and then you'll be functioning on ketones. The problem is a lot of people can't stay in ketosis for very long, and then they kind of go in and out of that mental fog constantly when they introduce or take away from carbohydrates in their diet. So again, glycogen is the main energy preferred source, but if you go through ketosis, you can function on ketones. So let's get into carbohydrate metabolism. So this is going to be a very overview of the metabolic pathways of carbohydrates and how it breaks down in your body. Just a general overview. This is not a nutrition and metabolism class, a cellular biology or biochemistry class, so won't get into the details of how many ATP is created from one molecule of glucose. But what we're going to start with is glycolysis. So that is lysis, right? The breakdown of glucose to form ATP and pyruvate. That then goes into the citric acid cycle, which is also called the Krebs cycle. It's a very elaborate cycle, but it uses pyruvate to produce ATP, NADH, and FADH2. So ATP, again, is our main energy source. This is produced usually through the electron transport chain. Does not have to do that. It either is anaerobic or aerobic. We won't go into the details of that so much. On an exercise overview, again, this is for energy and metabolism to leveraging carbohydrates. But based on energy production, ATP is produced either anaerobically or aerobically. Again, that is the breakdown of carbohydrate metabolism in our body. So glycogen storage and utilization works for glycogenesis. So that is the formation of glycogen in your liver and muscles. So how that happens is when you eat something, say you eat a piece of bread, your body breaks down that bread by chewing, and you use an enzyme in your mouth called amylase. Amylase is actually what causes foods to taste sweet, the carbohydrates to taste sweet. So that is an enzyme that breaks down food in carbohydrates in your mouth. Once it goes into your stomach, it actually is not broken down any further, but the amylase is denatured by the acidity in your stomach. Once it enters your small intestines is when it goes through further breakdown to, if it's a complex carb, to break down to the glucose, fructose, galactose. So once your body breaks down it to the final glycogen, it can go into your liver and be stored in your liver. It can also enter your bloodstream and be stored in your muscles. So the glycogenolysis, so actually the breakdown of glycogen for energy, is when we take those stores and then we use it for energy. So let's go into how to implement carbs into your diet for energy and metabolism so that you can be at your best. So a balanced diet includes complex carbohydrates primarily. Those simple carbohydrates do have their place. Again, talk to a dietitian or nutritionist about this if you need a little bit more details on if you have some medical limitations. But in general, having complex carbohydrates are the best choice, and simple carbohydrates post-workout, for example, to restore our glycogen stores in our muscle and our liver are going to be beneficial, but we'll get into that a little bit more as well. But complex carbs are going to be things like brown rice, quinoa, oats, and vegetables that have high fiber, high complex chains of those sugar molecules. So having portion control is also very important. A lot of times we tend to carb load. Say for in the morning we have cereal or a large amount of oatmeal and fruit. This can spike our insulin levels and cause us to have crashes later throughout the day. That is not good for metabolism and energy. So let's get into how we can further help you to feel your best throughout the day and have the best metabolism and energy. So the best carbohydrates for energy and metabolism, again, are whole complex carbohydrates. One of them can be whole grains. An example of this is oats, quinoa, brown rice, whole wheat bread. If you have if you have any kind of celiac problem where you cannot have these types of foods, there are other options like fruits, vegetables, and legumes. But in general, whole grains are beneficial because they are high in fiber. They have lots of vitamins and minerals that are beneficial for our overall health and longevity. So fruits are another great source. One interesting thing about fruit is that fructose, when it enters into the system for carbohydrate metabolism, it actually enters later on in the pathway. That's one of the reasons why having things like high fructose corn syrup, this is not, again, fruit itself because fruit is packaged in fiber, but once it's very, very broken down into high fructose corn syrup, it enters the pathway and it is dysregulated. So that's one of the reasons why high fructose corn syrup can be more detrimental to our health because it bypasses some of the things that where glucose would originally start. Fructose enters the chain a little bit further down and is dysregulated. And so it can cause problems with our insulin sensitivity more so. A little extra pro tip there. But fruits in general, just whole fruits, right? Having a package of a whole apple, any kind of whole fruit is going to be a little bit different because it's packaged in a fiber package. So this is beneficial because, again, the fiber, it does have a ton of vitamins and antioxidants. Antioxidants are good for our overall health because they fight free radicals in our body. And free radicals, if you don't know how those work, it is an unstable electron shell and it needs to have an electron donor. Antioxidants donate that electron to keep the shell stable and it can no longer create havoc in our body. So things that are high in antioxidants are great for cellular health and also overall anti-aging and longevity. Vegetables are also very high in antioxidants. They also have fiber and essential nutrients. They're great. Some examples are sweet potatoes, carrots, peas. Corn is, I put this on here just kind of trick you. Corn is actually not a vegetable. So if you think you're having corn in your diet throughout the day because it's getting you to have vegetables in, corn is not a vegetable. So it's a little trick there. Legumes is another thing that is great. It is packaged with a little bit of protein and a lot of fiber typically. Examples of this is lentils, chickpeas, and black beans. These are very high in fiber. And again, they can help with insulin regulation as well. So again, for balanced energy and sustained energy, these things on this list are going to give you the most sustained energy without spiking your insulin levels and causing you to have a crash throughout the day. So again, for energy and metabolism, this is a great list to reference. So common myths about carbs, let's go into that a little bit. Carbs do not cause direct fat gain alone. So a lot of times when someone consumes, say if they're going through a ketogenic diet and they introduce carbs into their diet, their weight goes up all of a sudden. The reason for that is because glycogen with the carbohydrate holds water. So more so than proteins and fats. It holds about 2.7, so let's round it up to 3 grams of, for the carbohydrates, you hold into 3 grams of water per carbohydrate. So it holds a lot more water than protein and fats would. So you're going to actually increase your weight because of that. Sometimes also carbohydrates will have a lot of sodium tied to it. So think pastas. That can also hold water as well if you have a high sodium intake. So that is a myth that it's going to cause you to gain fat. If you see the scale go up, that is because of water retention between the actual carbohydrate holding water. And then also if you're having sodium with it, that holding water as well. So a low carb diet aren't necessarily healthier long-term. I'm going to give you an example of a client for this, a case study. So we'll get into that at the end. So stay tuned about a real life story of how following a ketogenic diet for years and years was detrimental for her. So again, proper carb intake prevents energy dips if you have the ones on the previous slide throughout the day to sustain energy. So when should you eat carbohydrates? So to kickstart your metabolism, having a complex carbohydrate in the morning of whole grains, oatmeal, fruits is best. If you taper your carbs throughout the day, that's going to be the best because you need the most in the morning. You're coming from a fasted state. So again, if you're not doing any kind of intermittent fasting, this is the best way of dicing it up to have sustained energy throughout the day so that you can be your best for your business and business leadership. And especially, again, if we're 40 plus, we have a little bit less advantage for metabolism and muscle tissue as well. We lose about 3% of our muscle tissue without doing anything. It's called sarcopenia every year. So it's really, really important to make sure that we are very careful about our energy balances because our metabolism is naturally declining. So more carbohydrates in the morning, and then pre-workout, it's good to have things like bananas, whole grains, crackers, as long as the whole grain cracker. Even a smoothie with some fruit in it is a really good pre-workout. Having more of a complex carbohydrate before the workout is going to help you have sustained energy throughout the workout. And then having more of a simple carbohydrate, if you're going to have anything simple, is okay post-workout. But the key thing is to replenish your glycogen stores. So when you go through a workout, you actually burn through your glycogen stores first, and then it goes to fat stores. So depending on your goals, if you want to cut weight, cut body fat, or even gain some weight and gain muscle as well, it's a little bit of a different answer for that. But for sustained energy in general throughout the workout and replenishing your energy afterwards, this is the way we're dicing it today. So about 30 minutes within the post-workout realm is the best time to get the post-workout carbohydrate in. So in the evening, this is really crucial. You can eat before you go to sleep, but the thing is you really shouldn't be having a lot of carbohydrates. So your carbohydrates at night should be coming from vegetables and legumes, not from pastas and breads or even fruit at this time period, because if you don't burn it, you store it. So again, a little pro tip here, not necessarily having to do with energy and metabolism, but if you're trying to have overall healthy body fat composition, and making sure that you're not going into fat storage at night, making sure that you're having, again, the vegetables, not any kind of other carbohydrate or legumes, because if you don't burn it, you store it at night. So for nutrient timing, again, pre-workout, fuel your body about 30 to 60 minutes before the workout is optimal for performance, and then post-workout within 30 minutes to restore your glycogen levels. Again, this is to keep sustained energy and keep your metabolism going hot. I want you to stay anabolic throughout the day, not go catabolic. So a case study of this, for example, I had a client a few years back. This is again before we trained together. She was in her late 30s and had been following a ketogenic diet. And she ended up having high saturated fat, high cholesterol, high sodium for years. What happened is she had a heart attack, and she coded twice. Thank goodness she was in an office space where she was seen and was able to get immediate medical care for it. But again, they had to bring her back from coding twice. And when she saw a doctor afterwards, she had no pre-existing conditions. She had no family history. She was in her 30s. She was very young. And you guys, she was in great shape. She worked out every day, just about. She was very, very physically fit. Her body composition was great. If you looked at her, you'd say this girl is in amazing shape. But internally, because of following a ketogenic diet for years and years, it caused her to internally be unhealthy, and she had fully clogged arteries where she had to go through surgery. So a very, very real warning. Just because the number of the scale may be going down, just because you might be feeling okay, does not mean that what's happening internally is good for you. So again, she had fully clogged arteries in her 30s, no pre-existing condition and no family history, but the high saturated fat, high cholesterol, high sodium diet of having bacon, lard, pork rinds, all these things, red meats throughout the years and years caused havoc inside. So it's really important, again, not just for the sustained energy and metabolism, but making sure that we're going to be healthy for years and years to come. If we're at 40 plus, these things, we're a little bit more vulnerable to it. So it's very, very important that we have a holistic approach to this. So just some key takeaways from today. Again, it's important to include carbs in your diet. We went over how to include those, the nutrient timing behind it, how you can include it pre and post workout, how you should taper them throughout the day to have sustained energy and better health. And then understanding the metabolic pathways of when you consume carbohydrate, how it goes from mouth to muscle and liver, and how it goes from those to being used for energy. So we also went over some practical implementations for fitness and health, again, for making sure that you're going to be getting the most out of your workouts. So if you have any questions on this, or if you need a little bit more guidance, I'd be happy to chat with you. Again, I've been doing fitness for over 23 years, and I have a background in biomedical science. I am here to champion the gap between fitness, again, the undereducated, the inexperienced, fitness professional, and then the overeducated medical, well, I shouldn't say overeducated, but the very highly educated medical professionals, but they might not have as much background in fitness and nutrition. So I'm here to bridge that gap and give you a holistic approach, a lifestyle medicine approach to making sure that you have sustained levels of health and fitness for years and years to come. So thank you for joining me today. And again, if you want to reach out, my website is imagineyourfit.business, or you can always message me on LinkedIn. Take care, you guys. Have a wonderful weekend.